Hello, this is an assembly guide for the Circle deck box for 100 sleeved cards. This design is made by Laser Bear Creations. You can find it on my Etsy shop. All my files are made from the ground up. I do the design myself and all the graphics. They are built in Fusion 360, so you can have multiple material sizes available. Please choose the file size that fits your material. They come in both a with kerf applied to the design file and a non-kerf setting. If you want a very tight fitting box, choose the with kerf. And if you want kind of a normal, how it would cut, you do non-kerf. But the first part of my process is to mask my material, so that's what I'm doing here. This project was made with 5mm material plywood in a mahogany. If you're going to be using magnets in your project, you're going to want to make sure that you have your material somehow pinned down so that it won't move, because we're going to be flipping a piece later. Also, when you go to set your settings for the cut, do not select the circles at the start for the magnets. If you're not using them, just delete them or ignore them. But if you're going to use them, keep them in there, but don't cut them or engrave them right now. If you do, they'll be on the wrong side of the material. Once everything is cut and engraved, you don't want the material to move. You want to keep it in the same place, and you're going to flip the two parts you're going to see me flip right here. And once you flip those, you're going to go back to your laser cutter, and now you're going to take the circle parts that you didn't engrave or score earlier, depending on what method you're going to use to install your magnets. You're then going to engrave them. I would also recommend that you add a little bit of masking for the engraving process if that's how you're going to engrave the back part. So I engraved mine, and here you can see this is what it looks like. The engrave is pretty deep to fit my magnets. I chose a 6mm wide magnet by 3mm deep. But you're going to have to adjust based on what magnets you have available and what material you are using. So now that I've got everything printed, I need to remove the masking from my parts. Now it's pretty easy. I did the outside edges first, but this is a trick that I've seen around that I tried, which is to use some sort of sticky tape, duct tape of some kind. This is Gorilla Tape. And you just simply put it on the material, push down, and then it peels right off. Worked very well. I like to use wood stains for my project, so here I'm going to go outside the edge of the material to stain it just in a dark color. If you are using these stains, be careful because they will bleed pretty fast and they can go into the inside of the material. I chose to do all the edges, and then I didn't record it, but I came back later and I applied another lighter stain to the middle part. I'm going to super glue my magnets in. I like to lay out my magnets beforehand to make sure I've got the opposite sides in the right parts. For this project, you're going to want the two pieces laying down flat here to have magnets facing one way, and then the two pieces on the outside, the left and the right edge, facing the other way. So once you add the magnets to one of the parts right there, this is the other part where you're going to want the opposite magnet so that they'll stick together and the box will close properly. Make sure the magnets are fairly flush. You don't want them to stick out because that will cause the box to kind of catch on the magnets when you try to open and close it. So if you didn't get the engrave deep enough, you can use a drill to get a little deeper. So I use wood glue for my projects. This is just Gorilla Wood Glue. I like to put glue on the two different pieces that I'm putting together. For this project, you're going to want to start by putting together the bottom part of the box. There's a top part and a bottom part. Your pieces should look similar to mine here. So you're going to start with the bottom plate that I'm putting glue on and one side piece. One important thing to note is you want to look at the engraving on the pieces to make sure that you're happy with their orientation. So the bottom piece, while it can be flipped one way or the other, it will change the direction of where the engrave is. So make sure you check that. And once we add the side piece, I'm going to next add the front part of the box, of the bottom portion of the box. And this is the kerf version of the file, so as you can see, it fits together, but it is a little snug. These plywood kind of changes all throughout, so they're not exact fits. Sometimes it's super tight, sometimes they go in easy. Sometimes you may need to use a lot more force to get it in there. It just kind of depends on what material you're using. Now we simply do the same thing, and we're going to add the other side. It's also important to note the orientation of our magnets. If you're using the magnets, they should be facing outwards. So don't face them inwards, that's the wrong way. You got to flip it over and make sure it faces outwards. The one reason I like using Gorilla Glue is it's easy to clean up and it also dries clear. So you see in all these parts in between here, I like to use a paper towel and toothpicks to kind of clean up the glue. The last step for the bottom portion of the box is just to add the back. It's the exact same thing. You put glue on the inside and the other side of the box, so that way you get a nice connection between the parts. This step is optional, but if you don't feel like the wood glue has got a strong enough connection, or if it's not bonding, you can add some small wood clamps. I don't think it was necessary, but I like to do it sometimes. Now we're just going to let that dry, and we're going to move on to the next step, which is the top part of the box. So I'd like to start with one of the side pieces. It's the same process as before. I add glue to one side and then to the other. When you put these two pieces together, you'll see here I did have a little trouble with it. It kind of like fell apart a little. So it's a little unstable until you add the front part, which we're going to do next. Just add more glue, just like we did to all the other pieces, and should be good to go. You'll see here as you put the front part on, it kind of ties everything together, and it'll become a lot more stable. And it's important to get this part together because this is really the hinge part of the top of the box. So you want to make sure that it's all fits pretty snug together. And then lastly, all we're going to do is we're going to add the other side to the box of the top portion, and that'll complete it. So it'll just slide on there like that. It should be good to go. Just like before, it's optional to add clamps. I had a hard time actually finding a good way to kind of clamp the top of the box, but you don't want it to bow outwards, you don't want it to bow inwards, or it'll be an issue. So make sure you get the sides set pretty well so that they'll fit on the bottom portion of the box. So kind of the last step for assembly is you've got to decide how you're going to want the circle hinge to go together. You've got two options. The first option is there's a T part that I call a T-bar, or you can use these pegs right here. So if you use the pegs, there's 3 of them, and you're going to put those in there like you're going to see me put the T-bar, and they want to be pushed all the way in through that circle part, and they're going to be flush with the engraving on it. I designed the T-bar based on some experiments where when I put this sort of hinge together, the material bowed outward, and it needed something to kind of help keep it in. So that's why I did this kind of T-bar design I invented. And for some reason, I had a terrible time getting these parts together. They were super, super tight, but it's just a good example of how other pieces go together really well, and for some reason, these decided to be extremely tight. So I had to kind of wiggle it in there and try to get it put together. While it was tough, you still have to be gentle with it because they're not super strong until they're fully assembled. So the wood glue dried enough for me to get my box together. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our top portion and we're going to take our bottom portion and slide them together. If you're using magnets, it's really nice because the magnets are already in the correct spot, so the box holds together. If you're not using magnets, you're going to have to kind of look at it and be a little bit more careful and make sure that it fits together properly. One thing I realized when I was putting this together is I had to be careful not to flip the one engraving upside down. So when you're putting yours together, make sure that you're looking at the engraving and that you're not going to flip it upside down. So you do want to add glue, or at least I want to add glue to my part here, but don't add too much towards the outside edges of this because you don't want glue to seep out and accidentally glue parts of the box together that are supposed to move. So be careful and just kind of, I worked on the center of mine and the pegs to make sure that there's enough glue, but it wouldn't just squeeze out and mess up the box. Once you add your glue, you simply just put it in the holes and squeeze it together. I found I could be pretty forceful. I was a little concerned that it would be too tight, but honestly, I couldn't get mine in there, I think, tight enough for to go the full distance. So push fairly hard and it should be just fine. Now you're just going to repeat and do the same thing to the other side. Again, make sure you check the direction of the engraving that it matches so you don't get one that's flipped upside down. I was worried that I would make that mistake, and I could see that happening. So this box was designed to pick sleeved cards. It's got an inside measurement of 68 millimeters by 68 millimeters. I forget the height, but it's enough to fit a sleeved card with a little extra room. They can face forwards, or they can also face to the side, so you can choose which direction you want to put your cards in. And it is designed for 100 sleeved cards. If you like this project, please follow my Etsy shop. I do have a Reddit subreddit, Bear Creations. Please join that. There's a Facebook group called the Laser Cave. Please join that. And I'm always available for any questions. Feel free to send me a message on Reddit, on Etsy, on Facebook, and thank you so much.